Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's time for Krishna book. Summary study of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, presented in like a storybook by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So, this is volume 2, and it is chapter 35. And it's the last chapter in the 2-volume series of Krishna book. And it's entitled Summary Description of Lord Krishna's Pastimes. After returning from the spiritual kingdom, which he was able to visit personally along with Krishna, Arjuna was very much astonished. He thought to himself that although he was only an ordinary living entity, by the grace of Krishna, it had been possible for him to see personally the spiritual world. Not only had he seen the spiritual world, but he had also personally seen the original Mahavishnu, the cause of the material creation. It's said that Krishna never goes out of Vrindavan. Krishna is supreme in Mathura, he's more supreme in Dwarka, and he's the most supreme in Vrindavan. Krishna's pastimes in Dwarka are displayed by his Vasudev portion. Yet, there's no difference between the Vasudev portion manifested in Mathura and Dwarka and the original manifestation of Krishna at Vrindavan. In the beginning of this book, we've discussed that when Krishna appears, all his incarnations, plenary portions, and portions of the plenary portions come with him. Thus, some of his different pastimes are manifested not by the original Krishna himself, but by his different portions and plenary portions of incarnations. Arjuna was therefore puzzled about how Krishna went to see the Karanadakshayi Vishnu in the spiritual world. This is fully discussed in the commentaries of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. It's understood from the speech of Mahavishnu that he was very anxious to see Krishna. It may be said, however, that since Mahavishnu took away the Brahmin sons, he certainly must have gone to Dwarka to do so. Therefore, why did he not see Krishna there? A possible answer is that Krishna cannot be seen even by Mahavishnu, who's lying in the causal ocean of the spiritual world, unless Krishna gives his permission. Thus, Mahavishnu took away the Brahmin sons one after another just after their births, so Krishna would come personally to retrieve them, and then Mahavishnu would be able to see him there. If that's so, the next question is this: why would Mahavishnu come to Dwarka personally if he were not able to see Krishna? Why did he not send some of his associates to take away the sons of the Brahmin? A possible answer is that it is very difficult to put any of the citizens of Dwarka into trouble in the presence of Kṛṣṇa. Therefore, it was not possible for any of Mahavishnu's associates to take away the Brahmin son, and thus he personally came to take them. Another question may be raised. The Lord is known as Brahmanya Dev, the worshipful deity of the Brahmins. So, why was he inclined to put a Brahmin into such terrible condition of lamentation over one son after another until the 9th son was taken away? The answer is that Lord Mahavishnu was so anxious to see Kṛṣṇa, he did not hesitate even to give trouble to a Brahmin, although giving trouble to a Brahmin is a forbidden act. Lord Vishnu was prepared to do anything in order to see Kṛṣṇa. He was so anxious to see him. After losing each of his sons, the Brahmin would come to the gate of the palace, accuse the king of not being able to give the Brahmins protection, and of thus being unfit to sit on the royal throne. It was Mahavishnu's plan. The Brahmin would accuse the Kshatriyas and Kṛṣṇa would be obliged to come see him to take back the Brahmin sons. Still, another question may be raised. If Mahavishnu cannot see Kṛṣṇa, then how was Kṛṣṇa obliged to come before him, after all, to take back the sons of the Brahmin? The answer is that Lord Kṛṣṇa went to see Lord Mahavishnu not exactly to take away the sons of the Brahmin, but only for Arjuna's sake. His friendship with Arjuna was so intimate that when Arjuna prepared himself to die by entering the fire, Kṛṣṇa wanted to give him complete protection. Arjuna, however, would not desist from entering the fire unless the sons of the Brahmin were brought back. Therefore, Kṛṣṇa promised him, "I will bring back the Brahmin sons. Do not try to commit suicide." If Lord Kṛṣṇa were going to see Lord Vishnu only to reclaim the sons of the Brahmin, he would not have waited until the 9th son was taken. But when the 9th son was taken away by Lord Mahavishnu, and Arjuna was therefore ready to enter the fire because his promise was going to prove false, that serious situation made Lord Kṛṣṇa decide to go with Arjuna to see Mahavishnu. It's said that Arjuna is an empowered incarnation of Narayan. He is even sometimes called Narayan. The Narayan incarnation is also one of Lord Vishnu's plenary expansions. Therefore, when Kṛṣṇa and Arjuna went to see Lord Vishnu, it's to be understood that Arjuna visited in his Narayan capacity, just as Kṛṣṇa, when he displayed his pastimes in Dwarka, acted in his Vasudeva capacity. After visiting the spiritual world, Arjuna concluded that whatever opulence anyone can show within the material or spiritual worlds is all a gift of Lord Kṛṣṇa. Lord Kṛṣṇa is manifested in various forms, Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, or in other words, as Samsa and Vibhinamsa. Vishnu Tattva is known as Samsa, and Jiva Tattva is known as Vibhinamsa. He can therefore display himself by his different transcendental pastimes, either in the portion of Svamsa or Vibhinamsa, as he likes, but still he remains the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. The concluding portion of Krishna's pastimes is found in the 90th chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this chapter, Sukadeva Goswami wanted to explain how Kṛṣṇa lived happily at Dwarka with all opulences. Kṛṣṇa's opulence of strength has already been displayed in his different pastimes, and now it will be shown how his residence at Dwarka displayed his opulences of wealth and beauty. In this material world, which is only a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, the opulences of wealth and beauty are considered to be the highest of all opulences. Therefore, while Kṛṣṇa stayed on this planet as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his opulences of wealth and beauty had no comparison within the three worlds. Kṛṣṇa enjoyed 16,000 beautiful wives, and it is most significant that he lived at Dwarka as the only husband of these hundreds and thousands of beautiful women. It's especially stated in this connection that he was the only husband of 16,000 wives. It is, of course, not unheard of in the history of the world that a powerful king would keep many hundreds of queens, but although such a king might be the only husband of so many wives, he could not enjoy all of them at the same time. Kṛṣṇa, however, enjoyed all of his 16,000 wives simultaneously. Although it may be said that yogis also can expand their bodies into many forms, the yogi's expansion and Lord Kṛṣṇa's expansion are not one and the same. Kṛṣṇa is therefore sometimes called Yogeshwara, the master of all yogis. In the Vedic literature, we find that the yogi Subari Muni expanded himself into 8. But that expansion was like a television expansion. The television image is manifested in millions of expansions, but those expansions cannot act differently. They're simply reflections of the original and can only act exactly as the original does. Kṛṣṇa's expansion is not material like the expansion of the television or the yogi. When Narada visited the different palaces of Kṛṣṇa, he saw that Kṛṣṇa in his different expansions was variously engaged in each and every palace of the queens. It is also said that Kṛṣṇa lived at Dwarka as the husband of the goddess of fortune. Queen Rukmini is the goddess of fortune, and all the other queens are expansions. So Kṛṣṇa, the chief of the Vrishni dynasty, enjoyed with the goddess of fortune in full opulence. The queens of Kṛṣṇa are described as permanently youthful and beautiful. Although Kṛṣṇa had grandchildren and great-grandchildren, neither Kṛṣṇa nor his queens looked older than 16 or 20 years of age. The young queens were so beautiful that when they moved, they appeared like lightning moving in the sky. They were always dressed with excellent ornaments and garments, and were always engaged in sportive activities like dancing, singing, playing ball on the roofs of the palaces. The dancing and tennis playing of girls in the material world appeared to be perverted reflections of the original pastimes of the original personality of Godhead, Kṛṣṇa and his wives. The roads and streets of the city of Dwarka were always crowded with elephants, horses, chariots, infantry soldiers. When elephants are engaged in service, they're given liquor to drink, and it's said that elephants in Dwarka were given so much liquor that they would sprinkle a great quantity of it on the road and would still walk on the streets intoxicated. The infantry soldiers passing on the streets were profusely decorated with golden ornaments, and horses and golden chariots plied along the streets. In all directions of Dwarka city, wherever one would turn his eyes, he would find green parks and gardens, and each of them was filled with trees and plants laden with fruits and flowers. Because there were so many nice trees of fruits and flowers, all the sweetly chirping birds and buzzing bumblebees joined together to make sweet vibrations. The city of Dwarka was thus fully displayed all opulences. The heroes in the dynasty of Yadu used to think themselves the most fortunate residents of the city, and actually they enjoyed all transcendental facilities. All the 16,000 palaces of Kṛṣṇa's queens were situated in this beautiful city of Dwarka. And Lord Kṛṣṇa, the supreme eternal enjoyer of all these facilities, expanded himself into 16,000 forms and simultaneously engaged in different family affairs in those 16,000 palaces. In each and every one of the palaces there were nicely decorated gardens and lakes. The crystal clear water of the lakes contained many blooming lotus flowers of different colors like blue, yellow, red, white, and the saffron powder from the lotus flowers was blown all around by the breeze. All the lakes were full of beautiful swans, ducks, and cranes, crying occasionally with melodious sounds. Lord Sri Kṛṣṇa sometimes entered those lakes, or sometimes the rivers, with his wives, and enjoyed swimming pastimes with them in full jubilation. Sometimes the wives of Lord Kṛṣṇa, who are all goddesses of fortune, would embrace the Lord in the midst of the water while swimming or taking bath, and the red vermilion of kumkum decorating the beauty of their breasts would adorn the chest of the Lord with a reddish color. Impersonalists would not dare believe that in the spiritual world there are such varieties of enjoyment. But in order to demonstrate the factual, ever blissful enjoyment in the spiritual world, Lord Kṛṣṇa descended on this planet and showed that the spiritual world is not devoid of such pleasurable facilities of life. The only difference is, in the spiritual world such facilities are eternal, never-ending occurrences, whereas in the material world they're simply impermanent, perverted reflections. When Lord Kṛṣṇa was engaged in such enjoyment, the Gandharvas and professional musicians would glorify him with melodious musical concerts, accompanied by mridangas, drums, kettle drums, stringed instruments, and brass bugles. The whole atmosphere would change into a greatly festive celebration. In a festive mood, the wives of the Lord would sometimes sprinkle water on the Lord's body with a syringe-like instrument, and the Lord would similarly wet the bodies of the queens. When Kṛṣṇa and the queens engaged themselves in these pastimes, it seemed as if the heavenly king Yaksharaj were engaged in such pastimes with his many wives. Yaksharaj is also known as Kuvera and is considered to be the treasurer of the heavenly kingdom. When the wives of Lord Kṛṣṇa thus became wet, their breasts and thighs would increase in beauty 1,000 times, and their long hair would fall down to decorate those parts of their bodies. The beautiful flowers which were placed in their hair would fall, and the queens, being seemingly harassed by the Lord's throwing water at them, would approach him on the plea of snatching the syringe-like instrument, and this attempt would create a situation wherein the Lord would embrace them as they willingly approached him. Upon being embraced, the wives of the Lord would feel on their mouths a clear indication of conjugal love, and this would create an atmosphere of spiritual bliss. When the garland on the neck of the Lord then touched the breasts of the queens, their whole bodies became covered with saffron yellow. Being engaged in their celestial pastimes, the queens forgot themselves, and their loosened hair appeared like the beautiful waves of a river. When the queen sprinkled water on the body of Kṛṣṇa, or he sprinkled water on the body of the queens, the whole situation appeared just like an elephant enjoying in a lake with many she-elephants. After enjoying fully amongst themselves, the queens and Lord Kṛṣṇa would come out of the water, and their wet garments, which were very valuable, would be given up by them to be taken away by professional singers and dancers. These singers and dancers had no other means of subsistence than the rewards of valuable garments and ornaments left by the queens and kings on such occasions. The whole system of society was so well planned that all members of society, in their different positions as Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra, had no difficulty in earning their livelihood. There was no competition among the divisions of society. The original conception of the caste system was so planned that one group of men engaged in a particular type of occupation would not compete with another group of men engaged in a different occupation. In this way, Lord Kṛṣṇa used to enjoy the company of his 16,000 wives. Devotees of the Lord who want to love the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the mellow of conjugal love are elevated to the position of becoming wives of Kṛṣṇa. And Kṛṣṇa also keeps them always attached to him by his kind behavior. Kṛṣṇa's behavior with his wives, his movements, his talking with them, his smiling, his embracing, and similar other activities, just like a loving husband, kept them always very much attached to him. That is the highest perfection of life. If someone remains always attached to Kṛṣṇa, it is to be understood that he's liberated and his life is successful. With any devotee who loves Kṛṣṇa with his heart and soul, Kṛṣṇa reciprocates in such a way the devotee cannot remain unattached to him. The reciprocal dealings of Kṛṣṇa and his devotees are so attractive that a devotee cannot think of any subject matter other than Kṛṣṇa. For all the queens, Kṛṣṇa only was their worshipful objective. They were always absorbed in thought of Kṛṣṇa, the lotus-eyed and beautifully blackish personality of Godhead. Sometimes in thought of Kṛṣṇa they remained silent, and in great ecstasy of bhava and anubhava they sometimes spoke as if in delirium. Sometimes, even in the presence of Lord Kṛṣṇa, they vividly described the pastimes that he enjoyed in the lake or in the river with him. Some of such talk may be described here. One of the queens said to the bird Karari, "My dear Karari, now it's very late at night. Everyone's sleeping. The whole world is now calm and peaceful. At this time, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sleeping, although his knowledge is undisturbed by any circumstance. Then why are you not sleeping? Why are you lamenting like this throughout the whole night? My dear friend, is it that you are also attracted to the lotus eyes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by his sweet smiling and attractive words, exactly as I am? Do those dealings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead pinch your heart as they do mine?" "Hello, Chakravarti. Why have you closed your eyes? Are you searching after your husband, who might have gone to foreign countries? Why are you lamenting so pitiably? Alas, it appears that you're very much aggrieved. Or is it a fact that you are also willing to become an eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? I think that you are anxious to put a garland on the lotus feet of the Lord and then place it on your hair." "Oh, my dear ocean, why are you roaring all day and night? Don't you like to sleep? I think you've been attacked by insomnia, or, if I'm not wrong, my dear Shamashundra has tactfully taken away your gravity and power of forbearance, which are your natural qualifications. Is it a fact that for this reason you are suffering from insomnia like me? Yes, I admit, there is no remedy for this disease." "My dear moon god, I think you've been attacked by a severe type of tuberculosis. For this reason you're becoming thinner and thinner day by day. Oh my lord, you are now so weak that your thin rays cannot dissipate the darkness of night. Or is it a fact that, just as I have, you have also been stunned by the mysteriously sweet words of my Lord Shamashundar? Is it a fact that it is because of this severe anxiety that you're so grave? O breeze from the Himalayas, what have I done to you that you're so intent on teasing me by awakening my lust to meet Kṛṣṇa? Do you know what I have already been injured by the crooked policy of the Personality of Godhead? My dear Himalayan breeze, please know that I have already been stricken. There's no need to injure me more and more. My dear beautiful cloud, the color of your beautiful body exactly resembles my dearmost Shamasundar's bodily hue. I think, therefore, that you're very dear to my lord, the chief of the dynasty of the Yadus, and because you're so dear to him, you are exactly as I am, absorbed in meditation. I can appreciate that your heart is full of anxiety for Shamashundar. You appear to be excessively eager to see him, and I see that for this reason only, there are drops of tears gliding down from your eyes, just as there are from mine. My dear black cloud, we must admit frankly that to establish an intimate relationship with Shamashundar means to purchase unnecessary anxieties while we are otherwise comfortable at home. Generally the cuckoo sounds its cooing vibration at the end of night or early in the morning. When the queens heard the cooing of the cuckoo at the end of night, they said, "Dear cuckoo, your voice is very sweet. As soon as you vibrate your sweet voice, we immediately remember Shamashundar, because your voice exactly resembles his. We must frankly admit that your voice is imbued with nectar, and it is so invigorating that it is competent to bring back life to those who are almost dead, in separation from their dearmost friend. So we're very much obliged to you. Please let us know how we can welcome you or how we can do something for you." The queens continued talking like that, and they addressed the mountain as follows. "Dear mountain, you're very generous. By your gravitation only, the whole crust of this earth is properly maintained. And because you are discharging your duties very faithfully, you do not know how to move. Because you're so grave, you do not move hither and thither, nor do you say anything. Rather, you always appear to be in a thoughtful mood. It may be that you're always thinking of a very grave and important subject matter, but we can guess very clearly what you're thinking of. We are sure that you are thinking of placing the lotus feet of Shyamasundar on your raised peaks, as we want to place his lotus feet on our raised breasts. Dear dry rivers, we know that because this is the summer season, all your beds are dry and you have no water. Because all your water has now been dried up, you're no longer beautified by blooming lotus flowers. At the present moment, you appear to be very lean and thin, so we can understand that your position is exactly like ours. We've lost everything due to being separated from Shyamasundar, and we no longer hear his pleasing words. Our hearts no longer work properly, and therefore we become very lean and thin. We think, therefore, that you are just like us. You've turned lean and thin because you're not getting any water from your husband, the ocean, through the clouds. The example given herewith by the queens is very appropriate. The riverbeds become dry when the ocean no longer supplies water through the clouds. The ocean is supposed to be the husband of the river, and therefore is supposed to support her. Unless a woman is supported by her husband with the necessities of life, she also becomes as dry as a dry river. One queen addressed a swan as follows: "My dear swan, please come here, you're welcome. Please sit down, take some milk. My dear swan, can you tell me if you have any message from Shyamasundar? I take you to be a messenger from him. If you have any such news, please tell me. Our Shyamasundar is always very independent. He never comes under the control of anyone. We have all failed to control him, and therefore we ask you, is he keeping himself well? I may inform you that Shyamasundar is very fickle. His friendship is always temporary. It breaks even by slight agitation. But would you kindly explain why he is so unkind to me? Formerly he said that I alone am his dearmost wife. Does he remember this assurance? Anyway, you are welcome. Please sit down, but I cannot accept your entreaty to go to Shyamasundar. When he does not care for me, why should I be mad after him? I'm very sorry to let you know that you have become the messenger of a poor-hearted soul. You are asking me to go to him, but I am not going." "What is that? You talk of his coming to me? Does he desire to come here to fulfill my long expectation for him? All right, you can bring him here, but don't bring with him his most beloved goddess of fortune. Do you think that he cannot be separated from the goddess of fortune even for a moment? Could he not come here alone without Lakshmi? His behavior is very displeasing. Does it mean that without Lakshmi, Shyamasundar cannot be happy? Can't he be happy with any other wife? Why does it mean that the goddess of fortune has the ocean of love? Does it mean that the goddess of fortune has the ocean of love for him, and none of us can compare to her?" All the wives of Lord Krishna were completely absorbed in thought of him. Krishna is known as Yogeshwar, the master of all yogis, and all the wives of Krishna at Dwarka used to keep their Yogeshwar within their hearts. Instead of trying to be master of all mystic yogic powers, it's better if one simply keeps the supreme Yogeshwar, Krishna, within his heart. Thus one's life can become perfect, and one can very easily be transferred to the kingdom of God. It is to be understood that all the queens of Krishna who lived with him at Dwarka were, in their previous lives, very greatly exalted devotees who wanted to establish a relationship with Krishna in conjugal love. Thus they were given the chance to become his wives and enjoy a constant, loving relationship with him. Ultimately, they were all transferred to the Vaikuntha planets.